blood moons, and I'd missed the first three. I think two of it was because of weather, and maybe the other one I just wasn't paying attention to it. But there's been a lot of discussion about those, and I figured, well, maybe I ought to get into one since the next one's supposed to be in 2033, and they've got to calculate it way out into the future. Of course, there's been many in the past, and that's a good study if you want to study about there. There's a lot of things that correlate between the happenings of the moon and certain things that happened to Israel and the Jews. And, I don't know what's going to happen here in the near future. It's just something that we have to kind of watch and consider. God told us, he says, he tells us what's going to happen, but he doesn't tell us how or when those things are going to happen. He just kind of clues us in certain things. So we do know there are a lot of signs in the heavens that man can't control, and so we take those things as a moment of consideration to look around what's going around us, in the world. We all know that things are a little difficult out there in the world. This thing with the Planned Parenthood, 60 million kids have been murdered. Let's put that in a little bit of perspective. If you take all the man, woman, and children in Indiana and Kentucky and Illinois and California and just slaughter them all off, kill them all off, that's the number of children who have been done away with since we started this process. And that's just get my clock started here, so we'll go over. That's just the official record. There's probably some that, is not even official. We think about, Charles mentioned about those kids that's standing up for Christianity. 10 and 11-year-olds are being crucified for their faith overseas. We have not seen anything like that in our country here. And so we need to be very blessed that we've not faced that persecution, maybe yet. Maybe it's something that might be coming towards our way. I don't know. We just have to let God determine our fate. But I was watching that blood moon last night. I spent some time with my family there at Indianapolis, and we was looking up there. And to be honest with you, I don't know. I just wasn't really impressed with it. My idea of blood is when you prick your finger and how it looks like blood. It just didn't seem the right kind of color, and I don't think that that's what they were talking about in Acts chapter 2 about the moon turning to darkness and the sun turning to darkness and the moon turning to blood, preceding Jesus coming back. These dates have already been predetermined. Man can determine that, but I don't see God in the Bible operating that way, and so I think it's going to be something out of the ordinary that we're not expecting. That when we see this moon turn to blood, and sometimes in my mind I happen to see blood dripping like Jesus' blood dripping on the moon. That's just my thoughts. But there's something that's going to be a lot different than what we really expect. When we see all these things happen around the world, and it brings you to tears. And I know many times I get on my knees and pray, Father, please send Jesus back soon. I want him to come back. But I get to thinking, am I ready for him to come back? This summer I had a little bit extra time, and I was doing some remodeling. I had a bathroom that I really didn't need, and I tore it out. And I took everything out of the living room and expanded the living room about 4 or 5 foot. And I sit down, and I thought, wow, I got a lot of room here, And I was getting rid of a lot of the clutter. And I hadn't done anything with the TV, and I sit down and I was just saying, I need to get rid of this, and I need to get rid of that, and it's things I just accumulated over the years that I really hadn't been using, and so I was sitting there, okay, no TV, hadn't had TV hooked up, hadn't put the antenna up. I'm sitting there twiddling my thumbs, and didn't have the computer hooked up, and what to do now? And I had my Bible there next to me, and I picked it up and I started reading it. And, that's the first time in a long time that I've actually read the Bible. Not that I haven't studied. I study subjects to do sermons, and read books and stuff related to literature, our Church of God International pamphlets and stuff like that, reread those. But to really just to sit down and read the scriptures and listen to what God had to say, I found myself probably not really liking what I was reading, because I feel like maybe I'm not ready for Jesus to come back, I think we have a lot of work to do on ourselves to get the clutter out of our lives. When I first come into CGI in 1995, walked through the doors there at Indianapolis, and I remember how enthused everybody was. Charles talked about being happy about the feast and your life and stuff and what's being presented to us. And it seemed like we were different back then. I don't know. When I went into Indianapolis, and that's all we talked about, prophecy and the kingdom and what God had in store for us. But it seems like today, I look out at ourselves sometimes, and I include myself because I do the same thing. We're on our phones, and it doesn't seem like have that enthusiasm that we once did many years ago. And I don't know if it's because we're all getting older, we're just getting run down. Maybe the cares of the world are dragging us down, but we're not exhibiting that enthusiasm that we once did. I was led to back into Genesis and back into the Garden of Eden. And I wonder, well, how do we accumulate all this stuff? It seems to be something that we do. And I got to looking at Adam and Eve, and God put them in this beautiful place, a beautiful garden that He had planted. And I see Adam and Eve, and they were doing really well, and all of a sudden, Satan comes along, and he offers this tree. Of course, you all know the story. And what did they do? They started accumulating things, didn't they? Satan stole that fruit, and he offered it to them kind of like under the table, to the black market kind of deal. And Eve said, hey, that's something I like to have. Maybe kind of like impulse buying that we do a lot of times. We just pick up things and we really don't need that. So I think that's where we get that accumulation thing. I guess we get it honestly. Born into sin, aren't we? But we ought to hang on to things in our lives. We looked at Adam and Eve, and they're accumulating knowledge. They wanted that. They accumulated knowledge. They wanted that fruit. They accumulated that fruit. And we accumulate a lot of baggage in our lives. I've looked down through the churches over the years, through our congregation and some others, and it kind of makes me sad. We have people who are working on the Sabbath. They go to church and they work later, and when we don't come to the feast, we're not enthused like we used to be. And what's happening to us? I don't know. It's something that Satan is doing to us, and we're doing it to ourselves. We kind of make excuses. Well, God understands. Well, yeah, He does understand. I don't think we're going to like the answer. So, we've been through many splits. It's so sad to see how we've come down to such a little group at times. People go off to a different doctrine. They want to hear something different. Sometimes something sad is somebody gets mad and they leave. And so it's that things that we accumulate in our lives. We know about the fruits of the Spirit, but it's the other things that we accumulate in our lives. And it's time that we start cleaning house on ourselves. Jesus is coming. He's coming soon. I don't know when, but the world conditions just indicate that. And so, are we ready? When God, down through history, and Charles mentioned the chaff, God has went down through the history of His church and separated the chaff from the wheat. There are people amongst us, and has been in the past, that their heart is not truly where it's supposed to be. God looked at people like Noah and David and all the apostles and Abraham. What did he tell Abraham when he told him to sacrifice Isaac? He says, and now I know. Now I know. Is he going to look at us and say, well, now I know? Now I know they're going to be with me? Or now do I know that other things are more important than I am to them? So, again, it's very important that we start looking towards ourselves, getting ready for Christ's return. The title of my sermon is I Surrender All. We just sang that. Is that coincidence? I don't think so. God always orchestrates the messages. But I surrender all. Have we given up everything that we need to do? Have we given up our things that we hold against people? Given up having one foot in the world and one foot in the church. And maybe for some of us it's one foot in the world and half the other foot in the church. And so we need to really take a good look at ourselves. When I look at Adam and Eve, and in that beautiful place that we want to go back to so very much, I just can't imagine what was going through their mind when they were put out of that garden. God gave them promises. He offered them the tree of life. He offered them, this paradise that they had, and they had it in their hands. But they started accumulating this stuff that they really didn't need, and they were asked to leave. I just can't imagine the regret that they were facing when they stood outside the garden looking back in and know that they made a terrible mistake. I think it's the same way with us. We've been offered the Garden of Eden, and we want to look at ourselves and make sure that we don't have any regrets. Jesus is coming. I hope it is soon. So we all get down on our knees and pray, don't we? We pray that Jesus will come back. We want him to come back, but are we ready for him to come back?